Hello, and thank you for tuning in to this quick explainer video on using the enterprise budget templates that are available on the University of Idaho website. Now, first, before we dive in, if you haven't already, you can download these for free on the U of I website. So to find these, best way is actually just to go to your search engine and type in Idaho AgBiz with a Z, hit enter, and it should be the first result on the University uidaho.edu website. Now there's several resources here. The markets tabs, so for example, right here you can find more information on grain basis, wheat quality in the PNW, links to the WASD report, and other important information. But what we're dealing with today are going to be the crop budgets. So you click on crop budgets, you should be able to find your region in Idaho, and then you should be able to see PDF and Excel versions of those budgets. Now, I want to make a very quick note about these budgets and the PDF versions. So this PDF version, this is going to be something you can edit. This is the numbers that are in there are based on a model, and I use air quotes, typical farm. So if we assume you're using X practices, using X fertilizers, pesticides, things like that, roughly a typical quote unquote farm should have such and such costs and such revenues. And then we kind of give you a per acre of what that might look like. And the reason I wanted to make a note of this, though, is that these typical farm numbers should not be used as a benchmark for your own practices. Every farm's different, and these are not in any way meant to act as a benchmark. It's more of just a typical what might this operation look like. The best way to, if you're looking at your own practices to see where you can optimize, is really just to use the editable Excel version, put in your costs, and then you should be able to see much more clearly what is having the biggest impact on your bottom line. Now, once you have that downloaded, you have Excel open on your desktop, switch over here. It should look something like this. Now, because these budgets, if you go on there, you'll see there are different years for all of these. So the template might look a little different for previous years. This is the newer template. We're in 2022 at the making of this video, but they all have the same concept. One thing that is kind of new in this version is very quickly, right here, we added drop downs because this will autofill values and just make things a little simpler. Just click on the cell, and then you should have that drop down option right there. So you won't get that error on these pages. There's allowances for that. For the golden and tan cells, those are going to be spots where you just fill in either a number or a label or a name for something. And when you see these little red carrots in the corner, you just hover over it with your cursor. You'll see notes that we left if you're wondering if we want to just leave a note on how we got a number, or that this figure might be very volatile, or something along those lines. So the first place you're going to want to go is, very quickly before we move on, whoever compiled the budget, we're using the sugar beet budget. My name's Tyler, and you'll have that person's contact information there if you have any questions. But the first place you're going to want to go is go over to the settings tab here, and the first two options here, they're tan cells, so they're going to be something you fill in. These are cosmetic because the whole point of this budget is really just to fill in this. What is our per acre profit loss going to look like? So those first two options they're more cosmetic, so you can see it just carries over right here. Anything below it is going to impact the actual figures that are going to carry over. So total acres in production, this is used to do the per acre math. Regions in Idaho, we have default plug values that we included, and these costs vary by what region in Idaho you are in. So we added this drop down so you can just select your region and it'll just select the figures that we have for that region. Of course, we'll show you how to change those to match what you have in a second. This figure right here for your operating loan, you'll put your interest rate in here. This will just be the operating loan expense. The interest expense is calculated based on your total expenses. And this will just show, well, roughly we cover half of our expenses on a line of credit, right? If you're talking to your manager or you yourself are the manager, then you would just change that right there. And the very last thing is for irrigation. If you change this to no, there is a section in this worksheet for irrigation, and it will just exclude that number from your budget if you just choose the no option right there. So let's get started. You flip over to a worksheet. Any cells that are tan are going to be cells that you can edit. First, I'm not going to run, for sake of time and brevity, I'm not going to run through all of these, but I am going to just say a lot of these are labeled where it's self-explanatory, and the math is laid out so you can see how we're actually getting to the final number. These numbers right here in this column, these are what are going to be carried over to this enterprise budget. So, so for sugar beets, we're expecting $56 a ton. This was our average yield for last year. Here's our revenue per acre. So that'll be minus hedging cost, and let's just say for the sake of this example, we're not carrying any kind of crop insurance on that, and no government payments. So that'll autofill all the way up here. All those yield and price numbers will also carry over, and you can see all that right there. The part that I do want to focus on are these sections down here, and they're all laid out the same, and the way they're set up is, so we have figures that we included, and if you go over here, there are drop downs. So, like for example, let's say you're just putting together a rough budget, add urea, right? We have a generic price for that region. Our guesstimate for application is going to be that per acre, and that'll come out to $30 per acre, right? Now, we don't expect your numbers to completely align with what we have. You might say that this is too high or low, or this isn't quite what we do. For us specifically, your first option is in these two columns right here, is these will override the corresponding value over here. So let's say I think your application rate is about on par with what we're doing, but I think it's going to be 900 a ton for us instead of 1,000, right? So we're just going to put in 900, and you can see how it'll keep this value, but it'll override this one, right? Same thing right here. If I just want to, let's just say I thought that was too high, right? And you can see how that just fills in right there. We kept the $1,000 per ton price because we left that blank, but this overrided that application per rate number. So you can just go in and make those quick changes right there, or if you've already gone through and you know your cost per acre and you want to ignore all of this over here, then let's say it was 35 an acre. You can see that'll carry over. Sorry. And that'll carry over, and then all this over here will be ignored. So that's just there for sake of convenience. It shouldn't take you, if you have those numbers available, it shouldn't take you too terribly long to work through these columns. Same thing for seed, fertilizer. The last thing right here, this is for if you don't want to deal with drop downs and you just want to just put the figures in, or you need a little bit of extra space. Then right here, you can just write in whatever you're using, right? And just label all those. And it's the same figure. You can either have, if you know your cost per acre, put it there, or if you want that math done for you, put your price per ton or whatever unit, and then how much you're using per acre for the season. And that'll all spit in right there. The one thing I will note is just this right here, is that when you add something right here, it will be included in this fertilizer total. So it's not going to create a separate item. It's just going to be included with that number right there. So if you scroll down, pesticides, labor, it's all set up in a similar fashion. You can either override those values there, or if you know your cost per acre for these, then you can just put that in right there. Same thing, if you just want to write something in, do that right there and it will be included with that total. Irrigation set up the same way. Fuel, if you have your gross, if you have your cash receipts for the year well, I guess I shouldn't say cash receipts per se, but if you have your receipts for the year, you should know how much fuel you bought for your tractors, employee vehicles, things like that. Fill that in here, and that math is done for you, and will be carried over to that fuel line item. And you can see that math kind of being done here. This times this equals this divided by total acres. If you want to change that total acre number, again, just a refresher, that's right here on your settings tab. So I'll carry over to all these places here, so you don't have to type the same thing over and over and over again. So trucking, have a line for that. You can either just leave it blank if you're just doing a rough budget, or if you know your rate per mile, rate per ton, or if you're just using your own equipment, you can just put in a figure here to represent, because you're including your trucking labor up here in the labor section. So let's say you're using your own vehicles, your own equipment. At that point, you can just go in here and just maybe put a rough depreciation figure in right here, just to represent your trucking cost, and then add labor in up here, and then whatever your fuel cost will be included in that fuel section. So, and all of these will be added together, as you can see, and then put in that trucking hauling line item total. If scrolling down, this is the section where you're going to include whatever, essentially anything that didn't have a spot up here. So this will be things like maybe not crop insurance, but if you have insurance on your vehicles, if your residence is your primary place of business and you're including your homeowner's insurance in this for budgeting purposes, you can put this into these two sections right here. Variable costs, as far as our rough budget that we put together, we just put a general plug figure in, but if you have consulting fees, things of that nature, you can put that in here. You can put in either a monthly or an annual figure, and then if you put in a monthly figure, it'll multiply it by 12. If you just put an annual, just carry over, and then that'll be divided into acres just to give you a total number. Fixed costs, same deal, as you can see. Either fill in the monthly, multiply it by 12, or the annual figure, and that'll all be added in. Insurance, this is intended for, like if you have vehicle insurance, things like that, just add in your total premiums for the year, whatever that rough number may be. Right here, it'll divide it into acres. Depreciation, you should be able to get this. You can see what you wrote off. You should be able to, in your record, see what you wrote off for depreciation last year. Just put that total number in for all your equipment here, and that will be included in the depreciation line item. And then lastly, if you are renting land, if you're not, just put zeros here. If you are, you can either have your rate per acre. Again, the figures the default values we put in are rough, either what we got from an industry expert or from USDA data. And then you can do combinations of that, and if you owe a percentage on revenue or something like that here. And then this is meant to reflect if you have any, I don't know, ACH fees, bank fees, something like that. Maybe even some kind of a middleman. You can just put that total number in right there. Now, once you've gone through and you've been able to fill in all these numbers, you should be able to flip over and have your budget completely done for you. So revenues, variable costs, fixed costs, you can see all these, you can see very clearly where these were in the worksheet. But at the end of this, you filled in everything correctly. You should know where you're standing, and then from here, you as a manager, you can look at this and see what's your biggest cost as far as your operation, and where could we possibly trim those expenses, or any optimization, right, that you want to make. You can use this budget to try and find that. And then the last thing here is the only cell on this tab that you're going to edit is going to be this break-even analysis. You can see you can change the percentage here. So this is just meant to, it's a what if you've never used one before. So our default is 5%. So basically what this is showing you is that we have our expected price that we're going to receive. We have our expected yield, and I'm talking general terms just to include the other budgets if you're doing wheat or whatever crop you may be doing, right? But let's say, what would happen if we got either 5% more or 5% less as far as the price come harvest time, right? Or let's say things are looking very volatile this year. Let's make that 10%. What happens if we receive 10% less? What yield would we need to be able to break even? And same thing here, if we have a disappointing yield, what price are we going to have to receive to break even end of day and still keep our operation going so that we can dust it off and continue on next year? So I hope this was useful. The last thing is, if you're a little more savvy with Excel and you want to edit this, especially if you want to edit these drop downs over here, then I'm going to show you how to do that. So if you're trying to edit in these cells, and that was me being clumsy throughout the video a little bit, added that protected sheet in just so that, like, some of these, like right here, right, it's just to prevent you from accidentally fat fingering, right, and overwriting something like this or a formula that's important. So it's not meant to prevent you from editing this template. If you want to edit it, right click on the tab, you can go to unprotect sheet, and once you do that, you can do whatever you want. The thing I would add is you shouldn't be prompted for a password. If you are prompted for a password, there is no password, just leave it blank and hit OK. So same thing if you're giving this to employees or managers to do something with, I would just leave that blank, hit OK, and those presets should stay. Now, if you want to edit these right here, because all this will fill in automatically. So the way you're going to edit those values is right click on a tab, you're going to go to unhide. There's two worksheets I put in here. This one is not important, miscellaneous menu items, because this is just from the settings page. See these three drop downs? That's all this is, and I wouldn't touch any of that. So we'll just go ahead and hide that. The one that you are going to care about is unhide is worksheet inputs. Hid that just to keep things simpler, but I wouldn't edit this right here. This is used to select the range. So if we go back over to fertile, okay, well, let's go to pesticides. Okay, this right here is this. All right, pesticides is this right here. So, and this number, because we have different costs per region, is selected based off of whatever you put in the settings page. So right? Southwestern Idaho. So on this page, Southwestern Idaho costs, those are going to be the ones that are included to fill in this right here. So basically, I would just edit whatever region you're in and then just not change that setting. Any changes you do make here, they're going to be automatically just filled in to this worksheet page right here. So if you're doing your own operation and you don't want to fiddle with it too much, I would just edit your region here and then your use per acre and this column here. So whatever your region is over here, northern Idaho, southwestern Idaho, south central, southeastern, just edit that and just that and this figure. And one thing that might be advisable would be you actually go down here. Labor we have broken down by what type of operator, right? But and this is more applicable for a smaller operation, is if you look at your employees' pay stubs, right, and you'll have how many hours they've worked. You can just look at what everything where everything ended up last year, and you can just have Sam, Tom, Sarah, Jesse here, right, and then you can just fill that in. This right here is what you're paying them per hour. This is the number including benefits. If you're editing this yourself, I would just edit this figure right here. This is just to include, other employment insurance if you have any kind of benefits. This right here, you can just take however many hours they had in the year, just divide it by how many acres you have on your farm, and just replace whatever figure we have right here. So that way you can just go down, and once you fill that in, go to the drop down and just select Tom, Sarah, Jesse, whatever you put in, just to fill in what your payroll numbers are going to look like for this year, roughly. So I hope that's helpful. Go ahead and hide this again, just to keep it out of your way. And that should help you if you want to take this template, make it your own, and either send it out to managers, or especially if you're just if you're a sole proprietor running your operation, right? Just take the time to fill all those numbers in, and then you can just use this year after year after year in your financial planning. So I hope this was helpful. And lastly, if you have any questions, we encourage you to contact your local extension office. I'll show you how to find that in just a second. Or if you need a little help getting directed around, here's the email and phone number for our main office. And the very last thing I did want to show you, if I go back for a second, is if you want any information on the extension, you can just find us easily at uidaho.edu/extension. And then if you're trying to find out where your county's extension office is, you just go to that homepage, uidaho.edu/extension, scroll down, that plus button on directory. If there's a scientist like a weed scientist you've worked with before and you want to find them, go here. Otherwise, just go here. And we have a map of the state where you can find your local research station or whatever resource is closest to you. So if you have any problems with this or just general questions about production practices, dealing with certain kinds of pests, things like that, please reach out to us and let us know how we can help you out. Thanks for listening, and if you're watching this morning, evening, or night, good morning, evening to you, whatever it may be. Enjoy the rest of your day, and thanks for tuning in.